Hello, today we are doing Chapter 7, Section 6, and our essential question says algebra tiles, but what we're going to be doing is actually just factoring ax squared plus bx plus c into the product of two binomials. And I'm going to kind of show you two different methods of doing that. So on this first one, we've got 5x squared plus 15x plus 10. First thing you always want to look at is, do you have a GCF? In this case, it's 5. And I'll be left with x squared plus 3x plus 2. And a lot of times I'll refer to these as the easy factors because there's no number in front of that x squared. So you look for two numbers that multiply to 2, add to 3. And that would be x plus 2. X plus 1. And that's going to be my final answer. However, they're not usually going to be quite that easy. So I'm going to show you two methods. The first method is one that, even though it says guess and check, is actually the faster way of doing it. Especially after you've done this a few times, you get pretty fast at doing it. Your brain kind of checks for you. Because what we are really doing is the opposite of FOIL. So I'm going to kind of think about that in my head, and I'm going to do two sets of parentheses. And I'm going to look at my first term, 4x squared. How can I multiply to get 4x squared? And I'm going to make a guess. It can be 4 times 1, and it can be 2 times 2. I'm going to try 4x and x. And this is where the guessing comes from. So the factors that I'm using there are 1 and 4. And if this doesn't work out, I'll try 2 and 2. My factors for 3 are 1 and 3. And again, I don't know if I should put a 1 here or a 3 here, so I'm going to make a guess. And if it doesn't work out, we'll switch them around. So I know my first and my last terms are correct. What I don't know about is the outer inner, so I'm going to check that, the OI. And I'm looking for 13x. So 1x times x is 1x. 4x times 3 is 12x. And if you add them together, you get 13x. So that one is correct. And there is my final answer. The second method that I'm going to show you is sometimes called slide and divide. So on that one, I'm going to just start off with my problem. 4x squared plus 13x plus 3. I'm going to multiply 4 times 3. And when I get the 4 times 3, I get 12. So now I'm going to think of that as x squared plus 13x plus 12. And I'm going to factor that. Look for two numbers that multiply to 12, add to 13. Well, those two numbers are 1 and 12. And right about now, you're probably going, hey, that doesn't match up with what we got in the first answer. You're right, it doesn't. Well, we multiplied by 4. Now we have to do the opposite. We have to divide by 4. So, again, the way that I show division is with a fraction bar. 1 does not go into 4 evenly, so this is where the slide part comes through. I'm going to slide that right over and get 4x plus 1. But if you look at this other factor, 12 divided by 4 is just x plus 3. Same answer, two different methods. Let's go ahead and try this one. Let's just go with the slide and divide on this one. 3 times 2 is 6. So I'm going to think of that as x squared minus 7x plus 6. I'm going to go ahead and factor that. Look for two numbers that multiply to 6, add to negative 7. X minus 1 and x minus 6. All right, so I multiplied by 3. Now I need to divide by 3. 1 does not go into 3, so I'm going to have to slide it over. And I get 3x minus 1. 6 is divided by 3, and that'll give me x minus 2. And if I wanted to check that, all I would have to do is FOIL that out. 3x times x is 3x squared. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Negative 1 times x is negative 1. If you combine those, you get negative 7x. Negative 1 times negative 2 is 2. Let's do another one. 2 times negative 7 is negative 14. So I'm going to get x squared minus 5x minus 14. I'm going to go ahead and factor that. I get x minus 7, x plus 2. They multiply to negative 14, add to negative 5. In order to be a good person who factors, you really need to know your multiplication facts and your positive and negative integers. All right, well, I started by multiplying by 2. Now I need to divide by 2. Well, that does not go in there evenly, so I'm going to slide that out in front. And I get 2x minus 7. 2 is divided by 2, so I'll be left with x plus 1. And it is factored. All right, this is always a pain when you've got that negative sign out front. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out a negative 1. And I'm going to be left with 4x squared plus 8x minus 5. Now, let's go ahead and factor the rest of it using slide and divide. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. I'm going to have x squared plus 8x minus 20. So now I'm just going to think of that as a negative sign instead of negative 1. Now I need to find two numbers that multiply to negative 20, add to 8. Those two numbers are positive 10 and negative 2. Well, I started by multiplying by 4, so now I'm going to divide by 4. And this is a really good example because 10 isn't divided by 4 evenly, but it can be reduced. So let's go ahead and reduce. And I'm going to be left with x plus 5 over 2. And here I'm going to have x minus 1 over 2. Well, neither one of those can be simplified, so we're going to have to slide that 2 over in front. Oops, getting ahead of myself. I forgot to write a parentheses. So it's going to be 2x plus 5. And that isn't simplified any further, so I'm going to move that 2 in front of the x. And here I'm going to be left with 2x minus 1. And that's going to be my final answer. All right, there are a lot to try out here. Number 1, let's get started on that one together. If you look at something and you realize it's got some huge numbers, always look for that GCF. So on that one, I factor out an 8. And when I do that, I'm going to get x squared minus 7x plus 6. And then you just factor that further. Look for two numbers that multiply to 6, add to negative 7. I'll tell you right now, number 2, that one is going to take a little bit of time because you multiply that 14x and the 15. You're probably going to need a calculator to find some of those factors. Number 3, you multiply and you get x squared minus 7x plus 10. I'm going to factor that. When I do that, I get x squared. I'm sorry, you don't get x squared. You get x minus 2 x minus 5. And again, we divided by 2, or when we started by multiplying by 2, so we need to divide by 2. That just becomes x minus 1. Slide your 2 over. And you're going to get x minus 1, 2x minus 5. All right. Go ahead, hit pause. Try the remaining 6 on your own. When you're done, hit pause again and check your answers. I will give you a hint on 7, 8, and 9. I'd probably factor out a negative 1 before I got started. All right, if you need to see more examples, I would get on YouTube. There are a ton of examples out there. This video was only going to be about 10 to 15 minutes long, so there's only so many examples that we can do, but there are a ton of them out there on the internet. Just go out and look for them. All right, let's do a word problem. The length of a rectangular game reservoir is 1 mile longer than twice its width. The area of the reservoir is 55 square miles. What is the width? Well, I would probably draw a picture out here, but they kind of give you a hint. It's 1 mile longer than twice the width, so that's going to be 2w plus 1. And they're expecting you to know that length is, or area is length times width. So the length times the width is going to be 55. If you multiply that out and subtract 55, because you want that set equal to 0. Now, we're going to go ahead and factor that. They go through a table method where they try out every single possibility, which can be very tedious. That's one of the reasons I'm not big on this, but I'll let you take a look at it and see what they did. And you can see which one did work out. So it's going to be w minus 5, 2w plus 11. And they're asking for the actual width, so you need to solve. You get w equals 5, or w equals negative 11 halves. Well, the negative answer doesn't make sense because you can't have a negative width, so we throw that one away. The width is 5 miles. Try this one on your own. See how you do. Hit pause. In that case, it would be 8 miles. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. There is a black lab who thinks that I am talking to her about math, and she is not happy about it. All right, this is video. We're not going to make you do an exit ticket. Hope you enjoyed.